Right. Okay. Gotta fix that box lighting eventually. Let's go ahead and how do I tweet this out? Hey, hello in chat. I do not know how to do. All right. Give me a second. I'm going to go ahead and send out a tweet. Oh, wait, I got some messages. Oh, whoopsie. All right. All right. All right. All right. We are welcome. Let's go ahead and start. Welcome, nobody. Just kidding. Welcome to day 3 of training camp, Rens Training Camp Journals, episode 3, the last day of shirts and shells for the Buccaneers. And tomorrow, Sunday, will be the first practice open to the public. I'll get into that a little later. Give you some tips and tricks about how I think that the best way to approach that as a fan, where to sit, what you can bring, what you can't bring, and how they're going and where you're allowed to sit. There's actually assigned seating in the indoor facility as well. So let's go and get started. We're going to start with the offense today. From what I could gather from the tweets and the articles that have been out already, thank you to everyone who does that. We all appreciate it. Once again, we'll start with the offense. Mike Evans looked sharp. Apparently, Mike is beasting out there, and you're starting to hear these. I guess, narrative that he looks extremely sharp as far as mentally. He's laser focused this year and looks like he's out there something to prove, which would sort of, I guess, the best way to put it is he's stepping up. The absence of Jameis as the vocal leader, that Mike is stepping up as being the leader of this offense, which is good to see. And I think he's the right one to take it. Fitz is the quarterback, but he's more of the leader by example, and I'm sure everyone respects him in the huddle and his experience, and he's been in the league for a long time. But far as sort of the heart of the offense, the spiritual leader, thing that was good to see. Apparently, Deshaun Jackson and Fitzpatrick, their chemistry on the deep ball is really good. Um, they've hooked up numerous times these first 2 days. As we all know, last year, uh, Jameis and Deshaun Jackson were off just by a hair. It was very, mm, I guess, how do you say it was really close. Like some of the passes, you thought that Deshaun Jackson could give a little more effort and maybe even caught the ball. He could have possibly, uh, yes, I guess I was trying to say he could have given more effort. And uh, it appears that Fitzpatrick and Deshaun Jackson, they've teamed up well, and they're hitting each other, or Fitzpatrick's hitting him in stride, and he doesn't have to make too many adjustments with his speed to get to the ball. They're also using Deshaun Jackson creatively. It sounds like he's playing a lot of slot. He's running slants, which everyone has been everyone screamed for last year during those games. That let's just get the ball into Deshaun Jackson's hands in space. You don't have to necessarily run these 9 routes. You can use them more creatively than that, and it looks like they're doing it. I actually saw a video. Someone tweeted out that they gave him an end around, the end around sweep, which was something that also drove us fans a little batty. Was when they did that last year, early in the year, they kept giving the ball to Bernard Reed. Now, Bernard Reed, he's fast. His name's Speedy Reedy, but just because he's on your 53-man roster doesn't mean you have to get him in the game. It doesn't mean that you have to try to get him the ball, when most people think you have a better option for that play, a better, more explosive player for that play. He's running with the first team, but he's running a lot of outs. He's on the outside. That would put Deshaun Jackson in the slot. He's on the outside, opposite side of Mike Evans. Uh, According to some reports, he's not really getting in the mix too much. It seems to be, at least early on the Deshaun Jackson, Mike Evans show, as far as where the quarterbacks are looking, for the most part, at least with the ones. And but it's good to see that Godwin's out there, and a lot of people have said that it's going to be hard to keep this kid down, and he's going to have to find, you know, you're going to have to get him on the field. He's making you put him on the field, and it appears that he's doing that early on in camp. Uh, Also, apparently Ronald Jones, the running back out of USC, is now getting some reps with the one. I think we all feel that Ronald Jones eventually is going to take over the starting position, especially as soon as he gets down the pass protections, and not only he figures out where he's supposed to be, but then can actually pull off the pass block. Once he gets that down, he'll be the three down back. And I'm sure everyone's just sort of hoping in the back of their head it doesn't turn into another Jerry McNichols situation where he just didn't get it, like didn't pick it up, just didn't get the playbook, just didn't really. I don't want to say that like he didn't have it upstairs 'cause I don't know the guy, but he didn't pick it up fast enough where at least he made the 53-man roster, and the Bucks tried to bring him back on the practice squad, and he decided that he didn't want to do that. He wanted to go to the practice squad out in San Francisco, mm, which is fine. He's still on their team, by the way. He's still with the 49ers. We'll see if he makes it this year if you want to. But Ronald Jones is now, uh, getting some reps with the ones. He's not sharing them with Peyton Barber. I want to make that clear, but he's getting some reps with the ones, which is really cool to see. Uh, Another little bit tidbit. It's been reported that Jameis is starting to check the ball down more than he usually does in practice, which is you know that's cool to see. There's always this fine line with Jameis Winston. I'm gonna go ahead and type something in the chat real quick. Uh, there's always a fine line with Jameis Winston, as you want him to be, not so loose with the football, protect it a little more, but you also don't want to take away his playmaking ability, because it seems that when he does get outside the pocket, or plays start to break down, or he takes those chances, that they're successful, and those are the type of plays that win you games as a football team. But it appears, I don't know if it was him watching Fitzpatrick, run uh, those three games last year, because the difference between quarterback play from before Jameis Winston got hurt and after Jameis Winston got hurt was almost night and day last year. He played so much better once he came back. Uh, I've said on the podcast, and Brent as well on the Pewtercast, that we think that it's attributed to, actually, he got to sit there and watch Fitzpatrick run the offense more of like a little more calm demeanor. Um, not so much the rah guy, let's go, let's go, let's go all the time. So uh, that's good to see that Winston's, checking it down. Now, the upside of that coin is, well, now is he playing scared? I guess you could even start to say, or you could make a narrative up that, he feels that he's on thin ice with the organization, and in a different direction at the quarterback position from here on out. But it's just one report, it's just one practice. I'm not trying to start this narrative of, about Winston now is playing scared because he's playing for his career. But uh, it's going to be something to watch, and I'll be watching that tomorrow, because tomorrow, Sunday, will be the first open practice, and I get to go, and I'm really excited. Uh, The last thing about the offense, Anthony Auclair is apparently looking athletic. The Canadian Anthony Auclair is looking pretty athletic. Apparently Ryan Griffin hooked up with him across the middle a couple times today. He was out there looking good, at least enough where Buccaneers.com decided to put him in, what we learned today in training camp, or what we saw, or recap of training camp day 3, whatever, however they word it, name it. That it he you know he made one of the blurps. There was only like 3 or 4 blurps that they decided to point out. So um, it's good to see that Auclair maybe is starting to pan out to be the pass catching tight end that they'd hoped to develop into. They liked him as a oh, hey, what's up, Chris? Chris is in the chat. Big time fan, friend of the show, and PUBG partner, Chris from Alaska. He made it. Cool. Good to see you, man. Just finishing up the offense right now. And I'm going to go ahead and switch to the defense. Just to finish up with Auclair, that his reputation coming in was that he's a road grader as far as a pass blocker, a run blocker, a mauler, but he's going to have to work on his technique, especially his route technique, because it's such a he played football in Canada, but it's not American football. The rules are different. Um, Rules are way different, and but Jason Light, saw something in him. They liked him enough to go ahead and get him in camp as an undrafted free agent. They gave him, a bigger signing bonus than normal. And halfway through the year, they felt that, they didn't want to lose him on the practice squad. So they went ahead and released Luke Stocker, fan favorite, longtime Buccaneer. And, Auclair sort of picked up, or tried to do, I should say, what Stocker was doing for the offense. So now switching to defense, like I said at the top of the show, there's still shirts and shells. There's not a lot going on. You really can't uh, talk about the offensive line, the defensive line, the running backs, because basically they're out there playing two-hand touch still. But as a defense, MJ Stewart, the rookie third-round draft pick out of North Carolina, got to start at nickel today. If you didn't know, yesterday, Vernon Hargraves got spiked. He took a couple of stitches. It's not too serious. Even Dirk Cutter said in his press conference, he'll just be out for a couple days. Better safe than sorry. If it was Sunday, in my opinion, Vernon Hargraves would go ahead and play. But since it's training camp, give it a few days to heal up, and then he'll be back out there. But since he was sidelined, MJ Stewart got to start in the nickel when, of course, the offense went 3 wide, and the defense went to 3 cornerbacks. And apparently he's been playing really well. I think just about anybody who was paying attention to that, talked about it today on Twitter, about how MJ Stewart was in there, and that MJ Stewart looked good. There's actually been a couple of articles from a couple different outlets that's been posted today, and one exclusively just focusing on MJ Stewart. Also, Ryan Smith reportedly looked good. Like, he's playing more aggressive this year. He's looking good in camp. He's going against Mike Evans, which sort of an oxymoron, since Mike Evans seemed to be the belle of the ball of today's practice, and then you also talk about how good the guy that was covering him played. But he got a mention in one of the Buccaneers.com's articles about how his aggressive play, and he looks sharper and he looks better this year. And then finally, to round this out, Jack Sitchie, I think he was a 7th-round draft pick, out of Wisconsin. Didn't play football at all last year because he blew his ACL early on in spring practices and rehabbed. If you remember, he's the player that a lot of people, if he wouldn't have been injured and played his senior year, that he was projected as somewhere in the 3rd round of the draft. It looks like he's got the defense down enough right now where he is playing the 2nd-string middle linebacker, which is a linebacker that makes all the calls. The linebacker, that tells everybody where to set up and what to do, and make sure everyone's on the same page, which is a lot. An NFL playbook is not an easy thing to pick up, I can imagine. And it looks like, very early on in training camp, that Sitchie has at least gained enough trust from the coaches that he's now starting the middle inside linebacker for the second string. Now I believe that Riley Bullough was doing that, excuse me, early on, and I don't know if Riley was injured, or this is just like a one-time thing where they wanted to see Sitchy there. Uh, they're trying in a different position. I'm not going to go as far as to say that he's now the fourth linebacker, uh, because Adarius Taylor is the next guy off the bench. Like he's going to be the next guy off the bench after Quan Alexander, Levante David, and Kendall Beckwith, and then. So I guess I say Sitchy's a fifth linebacker. So the next guy off the bench would be Darius Taylor. I'm not going to go as far as say that then now Jack Sitchy is number 5 in the depth chart. But it's a better sign, I guess. It's more for Buck fans that they got a really good football player, and that at least like I said right now, early on in training camp, that hello everyone in chat. If you have a question, just go ahead and type it in and I'll be happy to answer it. And now I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the press conferences. Oh, we got a question. All right, this is from Chris. I'll ask Chris. Here we go. What do you think about the running game not being great the last 2 years, but in 2015 when the Bucks had a fullback in 2015, they were second in the league. Is there any correlation? Well, if you want to put it that way, then yeah, it would be a correlation. But don't the Bucks don't have a quote unquote fullback on the roster, but they do use their third tight end. When they're running double tight ends a lot, they'll bring in an Alan Cross or an Anthony O'Clair. And Alan Cross really, has sort of been the one that's done this the most. But we'll see how it pans out this year. But the Alan Cross, Anthony O'Clair, those are the guys that are, and it used to be like I talked about it earlier. Luke Stocker was a guy who would line sort of behind the line of scrimmage, not a classic fullback position, an eye or an offset, a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, but that's what they use. They use those guys as full, like, they're listed as a tight end on the roster, but if push came to shove, they really are playing the fullback position. So I just think, I guess, to answer your question, I think the running game more had to do with Doug Martin. And, I was a big proponent of Doug Martin. I thought he was going to get 1,000 yards last year, even when he came back off the 3-game suspension. I went out there and said that. Obviously, I'm stupid and I don't know what I'm talking about that. And the offensive line, Sweezy was a big disappointment. And then Kevin Pamphile, uh, regressed so much that he couldn't keep Evan Smith, off the field. So we had that rotating left guard, and then Sweezy, who didn't play nearly as well as he did in Seattle, before the back injury at right guard, and then Alley moving to center, and he's learning a new position. I think all that, you throw that all in a blender and you pour it out into a glass, and what you get is, a crappy run game. So I guess that would be my answer to that. Yeah, so I don't really think it's like a true fullback situation, because, like I said, the Anthony O'Clairs and especially the Alan Crosses, they actually they play fullback. They'll catch a pass or two all season long, but really they're in there to run block. So back to the press conferences. We got the first one was Dirk Cutter. The first couple questions to him were about Jason Pierre-Paul, and I'm assuming they were because he was coming up next. So the media asked Dirk Cutter about Jason Pierre-Paul, and I'm assuming so. Then they could basically, they could. It's sort of like getting free questions, I guess. Because when Jason Pierre-Paul comes up to the podium and go, "Hey, coach said this about you," or "Coach said that about you," which I think is common practice, throughout press conferences, that one person follows another. But just a few interesting things that that I thought Cutter said. The first thing was that sort of caught my ear was JPP's ability to play in the heat. Um, he even went as far as said, like, some of these veterans, uh, can't or don't want to put in the effort that we're asking them of during practice, training camp because of the heat. Uh, but he made it. Dirk Cutter said that that's something that's impressed him as JVP. And as he came in as an effort guy, not only an effort guy, an elite pass rusher, and a pretty good run stopper. Um, but he was a motor guy, and so far, even with the oppressing Tampa Bay heat and humidity, he's still going after it, giving his all at rep after rep after rep. I don't think he was back from JP was back from his hand injury yet. Uh, that they were more worried about him as a run stopper than a pass rusher. And he was quick to point out that not that he was downgrading or saying he wasn't a elite pass rusher, but he says we face those guys every week. Um, when it came to JPP, what really worried him was his ability to stop the run, and it sounded like they were game planning more around JPP through the run game than they were game planning more around JPP in pass protection. So I thought that was, interesting. And he also threw out a stat about rushing the ball. Uh, I think it feels like the press is sort of starting to roll into this. It happened. Obviously not the first press conference. That was the Jameis Winston press conference. But yesterday, like people talk, and some of the questions were just like a balanced running game is good, right? And it's like, yeah, it is. But they sort of continued on that. It sounds like they're going to, they're going to be focusing a lot on the running game. So you would think in the next, couple of days and weeks that we're going to start to get a lot of Peyton Barber, Rojo questions thrown at Dirk Cutter, especially after the first preseason game, and everyone gets a chance to see these guys go live, against another team. But Cutter threw out this stat. I said 5 of the 6 teams last year that rushed for 200 yards made the playoffs. And he said that averaged out to 125 yards per game, and that's something he talked about last year and has said a few times that that's sort of the goal. Um, Jameis throwing 40 passes and only running the ball like 15, 16 times, 18 times. That's not the balance that they're looking for. Now, of course, as you get into a game, the game dictates the score and all these other things dictates what you do on the offensive side of the ball. But ideally, that's what Dirk Cutter's looking for. He's looking for 125 yards per game from his rushing attack. Obviously, not just from one back. And he says that teams that do that, they average a little over 10 wins a year. And if you average over a little 10 wins a year, so we'll say it's 10. Uh, if you get 10 wins, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna make the playoffs. More than likely, you're gonna make the playoffs, especially if you're in the AFC. And then finally, he rounded out more props for Darius Taylor, aka Darius Glanton. Um, this is a guy that I've been high on for a few years. I've talked about how all he does is make plays. And Dirk Cutter, just someone asked about him because Kendall Beckwith is down, and so he's been at the Sam linebacker with the first team. All OTAs, mini camp, and now the first few days of training camp. And he just talked about a little story about how far he's come from when they got him, if they picked him up off the waiver wires, I believe, or they might have plucked him off the practice squad from Carolina. Either way, that from where he's is started, and they used to butt heads, and when they're when he was running scout team defense because Cutter wanted to run a certain way, and Darius is like, well, that's not the way they run it in Carolina, and Dirk's like, I don't care how they run it in Carolina. I'm telling you how I want to run it now. And going from there to now that he can play all 3 linebacker positions. He's the next guy off the off. He's the first guy off the bench if any of the linebackers get injured, even for just a play or two. And they talk about what a good person he is and things like that. So it was nice to hear that my 2 years of talking, about Darius Taylor hasn't gone in vain, or a little bit of validation for me, I guess, has been was kind of nice. Now I'm going to move on to Jason Pierre-Paul. He had a press conference, and there wasn't really a lot. That he can. They were talking. They asked him about moving in a defensive tackle because it appears that the obvious pass down rush package is Noah Spence, then Jason Pierre-Paul, then Gerald McCoy, and then on the other end, Vinny Curry. And they were talking to JPP about, well, how do you feel about moving in on defensive tackle on obvious pass rushing downs? Because you could expect an answer like, well, I'm a defensive end. This is how I've made my money in the NFL is by pressuring the quarterback and sacking the quarterback. And so the question was like, so how do you feel about it looks like you're replaying defensive tackle on like 3rd and 11, and he just said, I can play all positions. That's what makes me special. So there you have it. Not hurting for confidence, Jason Pierre-Paul. Um, and then someone asked him about Coach Buckner. He's Chase Pierre goes, I like him. He's like, I can say a lot of things about him. Like, I have lots of stories. And it was implied that, it's not appropriate for a press conference atmosphere for these stories. But I guess, what he liked the most about Coach Buck was that he does a great job in teaching the fundamentals. And you saw that on a video that Greg Allman put out today, where he was talking about eyes and hips. Like those are the two things you watch as a defensive player. Um, I guess the best way I can describe it is if you play video games, you play a lot of shooters, like, one's your feet and one's your eyes. One controls your feet, one's your eyes. So, you're looking this, you can look this way and then while you're walking that way. And he was sort of breaking that down. He's like, yes, it's your job to sort of drive the tackle or guard this way, but you're turning your hips because you're going to want to eventually you're going to want to break off and get that way, and you can have your eyes there. It's like you're driving this way, but your hips are turned and so is your eyes. So uh that was, I guess, if you go back and watch that video, which is it's insightful for how short it is, that that's an example of what Jason Pierre-Paul was talking um, about how he's really good at teaching the fundamentals. Last day, so that's it. I mean, without me being there, and I get to go once again, I get to go tomorrow. It's a lot of what's being, there's certain things that I want to watch. Like I want to watch the guard position, but once again, they're still in shirts and shells, so you can't really start to report on those things. So there's not a lot of really meat on the bone right now as far as training camp, but I think that will all change Sunday, and then it will all change again when the Bucks get their first preseason game in. So because everybody can see them on the field and everybody can start talk about uh, who played well, lesser known guys that played well or showed up, and where everyone truly is on the depth chart. I know Dirk Cutter hates the depth chart and puts it out just because he has to. He thinks it's ridiculous. But it's still a way to gauge where people are. And also a good way to gauge where people are is how they where they are when they do the drills. Like the defensive line drills, Gerald McCoy is always number one. Like he's the guy that always goes first in the drills. And if you watch it, it sort of tears down from there. Like the next one might be JPP, and then Bo Allen, then Vinny Curry, then Vita Vea, and then Mitch Unrein. But the guys like the Will Clarks and the Lamperts and things like that, like those guys are not in the first like 5, 6, 7 reps in each drill. So that'll be something I'm looking at. And it goes to wide receivers and it goes to running backs. And, this year quarterback's a little wonky, so it's not going to do that. But cornerback, safeties, uh, you know, sort of where you every day. So that'll be something I'm looking at. So tomorrow's gonna be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get there. But so now I'm going to finish this video talking about what you can expect. I know some of these people that, or some of the listeners, will be going to training camp, and there are some special. Oh wait, here we go. I got another question. If Catanzaro goes 5 for 6 on field goals in preseason, and the one he misses is from 53, and if Moore goes 4 for 4, all under 50, who do the Bucks keep on the roster? Uh, I hate to break it to you, Chris, but Catanzaro is going to be the guy because he has $3 million guaranteed, and I think he has some money next year guaranteed as well. Moore has a big leg, but even today, I believe I saw a tweet where Catanzaro went 5 for 5 and Moore went 2 for 5. Um, Catanzaro is the guy. Just think about 2 years ago when we first drafted Roberto Aguayo. We didn't bring any competition in from because we knew he was knew he was the guy. I think that Jason Light got bit by that, and now unless Catanzaro falls off a cliff, or gets injured, it's his job. It's his job. And in your scenario where he goes 5 for 6 with misses a 53, and Moore goes 4 for 4, but they're all under 50. Like, basically you can make an argument that they're, even though Moore didn't miss any field goals, but he didn't get a chance to hit a long one. Which one's better? It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't. If it's that close, it's going to be Catanzaro. It's Catanzaro. Just get it out of your head that the kicking is an open competition, because it's not. Catanzaro is going to have a Roberto Aguirre type preseason performance, and then it still might not be enough for Moore to win the job. So back to the open practices, which is, once again, I feel like I've said it like 9 times. The first one is tomorrow, and I got this email from the Buccaneers because I got my tickets, so they call this detailing your training camp experience. We got your RSVP for training camp. Please see below for helpful reminders for getting into practice at $1. Parking lot opens at 7:30. Okay, that's cool. Gates for members open at 8. Gates for general public 8:30. Now this is where I have my first problem with this. If you look, it comes with a map. It comes with like a little diagram, a diorama, not really, but a map, an aerial map of like where you're allowed to sit and where you're allowed to go. And there's actually, a VIP tent outside, but in the indoor facility, there's a members area, there's a general public area, and a VIP area. Now, really, all they made it sound that as fans you're gonna be able to wander around wherever you want, and you're not. Like, basically, you're gonna be able to go right where the stands were last year. And let me sort of visualize this. There's 3 fields, okay, and they're not end to end; they're side by side. So and the stands were on. They ran, down the sidelines of, we'll call it field 1, and then behind that was field 2 and field 3. All they've really done is just taken the stands away. So the area that you're allowed to view practice is the same exact 120-yard area if you count the end zones, and then behind, almost like an L, and behind the end zone of field 1 and a little bit of field 2. So I think this is going to be, especially the first training camp and being on a weekend, it is going to be a cluster. It is going to be a mess. You let the members in, which can get their seats, but now there's no stands. This is parade seating now. So if you've ever been to a parade, like at, like the Magic Kingdom or in Florida, or maybe like a hometown parade, that the only really good seats where you can see is the front row, maybe the second row, and a little bit of the third. Okay. And that's like, and by row, I mean like people deep. Then after that, there's got to be a gap because you have to walk backwards to be able to see. The further you get back, you can be able to see over the people in front of you. Well, the field is graded, which makes this even harder. What I mean by that, if you go onto field one and stand, directly in between the two sidelines, that's the highest point of the field. And due to drainage, it grades off. It sort of slopes down. Now, obviously it's a very minor slope, but it does slope. So, but when it hits the sidelines and where people will be standing or sitting, because you can bring chairs and stuff and chairs and blankets, uh, the slope continues to go down. So as you're backing up, you're also getting lower. Now it's not a huge deal, but the Buccaneers are letting in the members first. They're going to get all the good seats, which like I said, it's your choice. So you get all the good seats, and now they open up to the general public a half hour later, and all the seats where you're going to be able to see, uninhibited, or what do they call it, unobstructed, are going to be taken. And I just think there's going to be lots of complaining about what you can see and what can't you see. Um, because now, before, like, I've been to training camp. I went to all of them last year, and early on, especially the first weekend one, like, the stands were full and you were packed in like sardines. Like, you were actually physically, your elbows were touching the person to your left and right. Now, there's no, as you go up the bleachers, you can still see because the person sitting in front of you, it only comes up to about your chest. But now they're not, like, they're going to be standing there. And I just don't think a lot of people are really going to get to see what they want to see. Um, so, and then let me can continue. 1, 2, 3. Don't say your password out loud. Uh, mm, where? Okay, it tells you where. Okay, here we go. Outdoor practice, 8:45 to 10 a.m. And then from 10 a.m. to 10:45, I'm going to go inside, which will be nice because it's nice and air conditioned, of course. No bleachers or tents will be provided, but blankets and chairs are permitted. Pop-up tents and beach umbrellas are not permitted due to limited space and view obstruction, really. So you can bring a chair and you could bring your blanket and sort of scope it out. But if you're not a club seat member or a Hall of Fame club seat member or a uh, a suite member, um, you're just you're playing an unfair game from by the time you get in there, I would bet that the whole first row will be taken up, and probably the second, due to that it's the weekend and it's the first open practice. And since it's only, hey, what's up, Brent? And since it's only 6 practices this year instead of 11, this might be the case for every single practice as far as space and being able to see, because uh, if you cut it in half, that people want to go to these practices. Since there's only half of them, everyone just might be as crowded as the first one. So I don't know, and what, as a selfish reason, what sort of uh, I don't know what video I'm going to be able to take. Now, yes, and thankfully that Brent and I get to have press passes on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I've heard there's a shoot like there was, has been all the other years. So when you put up and you're in the front row of the practice field, then there's another area right in front of that where the media can sort of take pictures and things. But now there's no stands where people are higher, so as a media member, kneeling down might not be good enough, because if people are sitting in chairs right behind you, me on a knee, I'm 6'1", I'm still blocking their view. So it's going to be interesting. I think like I said, I don't think there's going to be this huge outrage, but I think that people that go to these open practices are not going to get to see what they're expecting or hoping to see. It's definitely not free roaming. Um, it's only really the same areas that you could go uh, in previous years. And then how I mentioned a little later says the indoor practices from 10 to 10:45. Blankets and chairs are not permitted, and due to limited space. You may leave your belongings outside at your own risk. That's fair. Or take them back to the car during the transition, um, which is, it's also fair. They're going to let you back in, but they've always let you back in. But the indoor facility also has like seating regulations, which is on one end zone to probably, I would say, the 30-yard line is VIP, and then from the 30 all the way down across 50 down past the I guess looking across at the end zone is general public, and then there's actually some bleachers behind one end zone, and that's members area. So if you're general public, you're going to only have that one spot, for about 80 yards where you can sit. Okay, now if you're planning on going to any of these practices, this is what where I would post up, where I would sort of lay my camp, because you can bring blankets and chairs, and if anyone has ever gone to one of these, like, let's how do you plays in the park, or things like that nature, where they just sort of like lift the gate and everyone runs and you toss your blanket down, and that's your space, and everyone just sort of respects that. You get your chair open, that's your spot. I would get somewhere between the 40-yard line and the 20-yard line on the side that's closest to the indoor facility, because from all the videos that I've been watching, it seems that the Bucks that's the way the 11-on-11s and the 7-on-7s are going. They're throwing towards, or the offense is going towards, the indoor facility. So the best place for the view would be in between the 40 and the 30. Yeah, you can go down to the 25, but that's the sweet spot. The 40, between the 40 and 30 is going to be the sweet spot. And the same thing for the indoor facility, because they do end up going, they're sort of set up around midfield. So then offense is either going towards one end zone or the other end zone. Now, if you're on the side, and you're in the middle, it might not really matter which side. But if you're in the end zone in the members area, and the offense decides to go the other way, like, you won't be able to see, like, at all, because the whole entire team lines up behind the offense. So if the offense is going the opposite way of where the members area end zone is, you during the 11-on-11, 7-on-7, let's face it, that's the fun. Those are the drills you're there to see. It's offense versus defense. Here we go. You're not going to be able to really see it. So here's what I would do. I would either get a blanket and chair. I think I'm going to bring a towel, because I don't want to, like, be a jerk and take out this huge space as a blanket and just be one person. I'm going to take a blanket, or excuse me, a towel, or maybe a chair, one of the two. I haven't really decided yet. And I'm going to get in the sweet spot on the outside, and I'm going to use that as my home base. Like, I doubt I'll be there the whole time, but that's going to be my home base, because I think, even though the field grades down, and as you get for second row, third row, fourth row of people, it gets harder and harder to see, but that's where all the action's going to be. So also bring your sunscreen. You can bring bottled water, I believe, or no, not bottled water. You can bring a container that holds water, but you can't bring in a bottle of water. Let's see if there's anything else interesting on this. Oh, yeah, it says, please note, just, for everyone, please note this is a sold out practice, and your digital ticket will be required for entry. No printed tickets will be accepted. Which means, they send it to your inbox digitally. If you've already signed up, you go to the Buccaneers app and you sign in, and you go to My Events or My Tickets or My Events, one of the two, and it has, like, the little QR code on there. But what you can't do is print that up and have it scanned, because I guess what they're saying is that they don't want people just printing up multiple copies. And then, I know the QR code is each individual person, but just to sort of take that risk out, where people going, no, this is my QR code, and and someone else like, no, this is my QR code, and they both have printed copies, and maybe somebody sold it to them or gave it to them, or promised them they really wanted to get in, like, here, so your ticket has to be digital, and so it's got to be on your phone. No printed copies. So make sure you do that. If you buy tickets from somebody, because you're dying to go and you didn't get there and you didn't get in, um, make sure you get the digital copy. So that's it. Thanks for everybody joining me. Um, Tomorrow, once again, like I've said numerous times, I will be out there at practice. I will try to get videos of the things that I'm interested in, the things that you're interested in. I'll be posting them. The easiest, of course, you find me on Twitter and follow me on Twitter to get to see these videos and tweets I put out tomorrow. That's at Rendaxt, REN_DAXT. Also follow the show, the Pewtercast, at the Pewtercast, just the way it's spelled on Twitter. And if you have any questions, comments, you can tweet at me. But if it's too long, you can always DM me on Twitter, and I'll try to. Well, I will answer your questions, but I'll try to get the pictures or pay attention or videos of the things that you want to see. So I'm really excited for tomorrow's show. I get to go to One Buck. We'll see. I'm hoping, against all hope, that isn't really, this isn't a cluster about how many people show up and actually how many where you're actually going to be able to see practice. As someone showing up to want to watch practice. So tomorrow will be tomorrow, and yeah. What a great outro. Nice job, Ren. So I will talk to you guys tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. Ren Dax for the Pewtercast, signing off.